by God, if you don't walk in there and have enough confidence to be able to say it, whether you do say it or not, have the confidence to say the same shit that Russell said at the beginning of this episode. Hello, wrenches. How you doing? Welcome back to the Wrench Turners podcast, folks. 10 Mil Mastery Edition. It's a show where the lads and I discuss topics that are relevant to today's technicians and service leaders. In today's episode, Russell lets it hang, and we discuss how do you as a technician gauge and ask for your value. Let's get into it. Okay, Richard.
Well, this actually segues great into my question, is because this is always a big question, and this leads up into interviews and everything else like that, is how do you guys establish your value when interviewing, right? Because we all know you're going to come in, you're going to sit down, especially at the dealership level, and they're going to have a range of pay, right? They're going to have like what they pay their lube techs, what they pay for in the States, the C, B, and A techs, right? So your A-line techs or your heavy line techs doing engine repair, heavy diagnosis. Russell is an A-line tech. I'm an A-line tech. Your C guys are they're out of the lube bay, but they're not doing, heavy diagnostics yet. They're still doing tires and brakes. They're doing, they make a lower rate. And then you have your B techs who are they ride that middle, right? They're not quite there yet to be an A-line tech, but they're almost there, right? So my question is, how do you guys come into a situation like that where how do you argue your value, right? Because we all know you're gonna walk into a dealership, here's your resume. They don't know you from the next jack walking in the door, and they're gonna want to lowball you, right? So they're going to want to get you at the cheapest rate that they can get you, and you know what you can get for, right? So how do you guys establish your personal value when you're interviewing?
Well, since I'm playing that game right now, I'll go ahead and jump on that one. I ask them what their ELR is, and I want 30% of it.
That's a I think the best way to put it is that's a big dick energy moment right there. I think fundamentally saying that you're worth 30% of your ELR can hurt you a bit, but it can also say, hey, I'm confident in my work. If you can back it up, that's a big deal. So I'm going to play devil's advocate. I am not going to say how I would do it because I have a little bit different thought process in this one. And this is one reason why I built the survey, gentlemen. I built the Wrench Turners Wellness Survey so I could start accumulating data so that it's no longer a subjective value. It's an objective value. So you guys all did my beta, my alpha test on the Wrench Turners Wellness Survey. And since then I've acquired, I'm roughly 350 technicians into the wellness survey, and they're starting to become averages that I can start to look at. I can't dissect by brand just yet. There's not enough, and I can't dissect. So that's coming, but there's starting to be trends based on training levels. So this is something that I can speak somewhat objectively on. I've spoken on this before, but I'll go in a little bit more detail. One, if you are level 1 trained in your brand level, okay, this goes so far pretty much across the board for every brand that I have that has taken the survey. If you are level 1, and if you don't quote unquote know what level 1 means, level 1 basically means that if your brand has basic training, basic technical training, so it's introduction to electronics 101, this is what a ball joint is, basic training. So fundamentals across the board, that's level 1 completed. Those individuals do not make more than $40,000 a year US. Okay? It's almost explicit across the board. They do not make more than $40,000 a year. Level 2 completed. So this is intermediate level training. This is how you use your multimeter in this circumstance. It's using the multimeter. It's not detailed. It's not going, down the rabbit hole of diagnosis. It's how to use it, but told to you in a rough general idea. It's basic skill sets of taking apart transfer cases and telling you what the individual pieces are. Those individuals make up to roughly $60,000 a year. However it's broken down, whether it's flat rate or alloy, it's pretty much across the board. The pay structure makes them make roughly $60,000 a year. Experience at this stage doesn't enter the equation. So if someone starts in automotive and quickly crushes out their level 2 complete, they can be making $60,000 a year one. Pretty much across the board. With very little, if any, exception. So the big void here comes next. So level 3, there is almost no one making between $60,000 a year and $80,000 a year. It's pretty much across the board. It's just a big void. And this is US dollars to reiterate. If you have your level 3 complete in the continental US, working in automotive, you are making $80,000 a year or more. So level 3 complete means advanced level, everything across the board complete. So you're talking about heavy diagnostics, electronics. You're talking about heavy engine diagnostics across the board. You're talking about it, but we're talking about basic skill structures completed. So basic systems completed. Engines, your powertrains, your engines, your diesels, your transmissions, your differentials, all of that complete across the board. It doesn't include specialties where they talk about model specific stuff. Like the four of us have talked about in the group chat where we say, a 6L80 has this specific thing that's different from a 6L90, if that's a code. Russell and Richard, you can correct me, but the very specific model stuff, that's plus. And then there's Doctor of the House. Doctors of the House make astronomical money above that, but I haven't got enough to give you an average of that stuff yet. But point is, level 3 complete. If you are an advanced level, technically trained technician in a brand, they do not make less than $80,000 a year. They make, on average, $110,000 a year. On average, the lowest being thus far $80,000. So that, from an objective data standpoint, that means to me, for those of you listening out there right now, if you are level 1, you should be making up to 40. Level 2, up to 60. Level 3 complete, you can make the sky's the limit, but it should start at 80 as your things roll. And I'll go a little bit more detail. Okay, a very good friend. I won't go into hyper detail of his because I'm sure, but Zach Perkle sent me the pay plan of his store to help discuss certain things because he wants to do better by his technicians. I won't say what the individual numbers are, but I will say, if you as a technician like Russell is out there shopping for a new store to work at, and you ask the service leader or the fixed ops director, how they pay, I would suggest you should be looking for someone like Zach Perkle, because Zach Perkle and their group has level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, level 5, level 5 plus, journeyman. They have it broken down by hours produced, 0 to 39.9, 40 to 44.9, 50 to 50. They have everything broken down in category. They have it written. They include what the potential bonus on top of that is. If you produce a certain amount based on your pay structure, they give additional to certain things. And it's in writing, broken down simply. This is the best pay plan structure I have ever seen in writing. This is our benchmark, ladies and gentlemen. If you do not have something like this, you need to seek it out. And then you have the conversation like Russell had. It's like, what's your ELR? So what's your experience, Richard? Do you have something similar to what Zach has out there, or have you had to go out there slinging like Russell?
A bit of both. So when I worked at Ford, we had a dedicated pay plan based on experience level. And then before the one group bought us out, you had your dedicated pay plan for what the top pay was, what the bottom pay was, where you were at, what your negotiation was in between there, and then we had a dedicated bonus structure as well. That all changed when the group took over. But again, they came in and they were like, these are the base pay plans. I am instrumental in building the base pay plans right now at the GM dealership that I'm at. I'm the one who does the majority of the hiring and the firing, along with my service manager. We we're sitting down with the owner group here pretty soon and establishing what kind of pay rates we're looking at and everything like that for going forward for hiring technicians, because it's not getting easier to hire technicians, right? So that's all working out. Bonus structure is non-existent right now in the store that I'm in, but that, again, that will come down in the future with we continue to it, not if, but when we continue to build on the months that we've just had. Yeah, that will eventually come back and feed back into the dealership, right? So we are I am instrumental in this store with building future pay plans with the technicians, possible bonus structures as well, and how they'll look and where they'll go from there. But to counter Russell, you know how many stores you ask for their ELR and they just have like the blank look on their face? They just go,
I can't wait. I can't wait to hear this number.
Well,
I can't wait.
About 3/4 of them have that attitude, and if that's what they know, I don't want to work for them.
yeah.
Are you telling me you're asking service managers what their ELR is and they're giving you deer in headlights?
Yes.
You have no idea how many. So I'll put this into context. So when I worked at the GM store, it was a family run store. I asked the service manager, I'm like, well, what's our monthly gross target? And she looked at me and she goes, what are you talking about? And I'm like, what? I'm like, you got to know what your profitability margin is. Like, what's your current ELR? What's your current effective labor rate? What's that? I'm like, what's your percentage of warranty to customer pay? What's that? The amount of dealer, like, it's a lot different in larger groups where they can't hide that shit. But in smaller groups and smaller stores, more family run stuff, a lot of them play that information really close to the chest. You ask to see a financial data sheet. Like when I went to my GM, when they sat me down an interview, I'm like, show me a financial sheet. And they kind of looked at me. They're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, I want to see the financials. If I'm going to come and work for you and portion of my pay is going to be based off of a percentage, I need to see the financials before I can commit to it. I need to see what your estimated growth is for the next 2 years. I need to see this projection. And they were like, okay, here you go. And they handed it all to me. And I was like, this is amazing. Like, I had all this paperwork in my hands and I could make my judgment call from there. But the amount of times I've, like when I sat down at Nissan and was like, this is what they were like, oh, this is how much the shop pays. And I'm like, I'm not taking a job at that rate. Like, I don't care if it's got an import label on the outside of the store. I know how much you charge per hour. What's your effective labor rate? And they told me, and I was like, you guys are insane. Like, they were paying out of their effective labor rate, the top technician pay before I started there was 20.2%. Like, for top technician. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, wow. I'm going to come here. I'm going to bring all my experience. I negotiated for a higher wage. I ended up getting up to 23%. But then starting there, then I figured out that the entire store got a raise when I started there. So I was kind of like, well, that was a kick in the ass. But regardless of that, yeah, I'm on board with Russell. Like, there are so many service managers out there. You ask them what their effective labor rate is, or even what's your sold hours per RO, and they're like,
yeah,
one.
If a service manager, you think all three of us have experienced Joe Chambers on SDL. If he had service managers that couldn't rattle off their ELR, their gross, and their hours per O at the drop of a hat, they'd be out the door faster than Barney Rubble. Like, it would be, or I'm thinking, actually, I got a better one than that. That's Jazzy Jeff from the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. He'd be at the door by Uncle Phil. But these are like, now we are all experienced enough to know what these things are. And I think we should probably do like a technician's version of teaching other techs what these acronyms are and are mean. We could do that. We got to do that. That's Okay, that's going to go on the notepad for later because we can do a masterclass on what this stuff is and teach techs to learn what the nomenclature and the acronyms mean and what it means to them and how it represents to them on a much larger scale. Because as a technician, we need to know what those things are, especially when it comes to pay. You know, how do you negotiate and what do you ask and so on and so forth. That's a good. Well, Marshall, what would you how would you do this? How would, in your position, like, have you come across the Zach Perkles where they've had structure? Like, have you come across union shops in HD? And I know you're not negotiating flat rate because the majority HD is straight hourly, but
yeah,
where's it for you?
So yeah, I do the same thing, similar to Russell. I mean, I gauge my value from like 30 to 35% of the ELR. That's pretty much what senior journeyman master level technicians are going for. The master level, the guys that carry OEM master certs are going to go for that 35% range.
Mm-hmm.
And then the high level journeymen are definitely going for 30% of the ELR. So right off the rip, I know that I'm going for that. I always keep in mind that I have some other tactile skill sets that I am able to sell, like my apprenticeships that I do, and I have other skill sets that I bring to the table that I don't discount, and I work diligently to sell those as talents and skills that are important to my branch and wherever I'm working.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like as a technician, one of the biggest things you can do for yourself to gauge your value, whether it's the value at your current place that you're working or your value going forward, if you're thinking about making a move, is that we all know technicians from across town. You should be friends you should network on all the social media platforms, and you should know what the other technicians across town are making because and I'm not
That's not
you
always
have
the
to
best judge, though, buddy. You know that. We know that because
I know
somebody's
I
going to tell
know
them they
but
make
you
70 grand, they could barely crack 50.
well and you have to be a judge of character on that though, right? So like I have very good friends that I've known for 10 plus years, and I'm like, hey, how's it going? They're like, oh man, this shop I'm working at sucks, and I can know for sure that that's probably true.
Mm-hmm.
When if I got a buddy that's like, hey man, I just took this job over at Peterbilt, which is a big truck manufacturer. Say I just took this job over in Utah, and they're paying me 65 an hour. Um, I can know that he's being truthful. That is what he's making, because I've known him for a long, long time. So, and that really happened. He's a master technician. He was making $65 an hour. So, I can gauge my value based on those things. The other thing is I noticed moving cross country that I hear a lot of chatter in the market about a cost of living and these things and that things. And I know it may be different for automotive, but in HD, cost of living is not a thing. I can go to the Midwest and make the same amount of money I got more money coming to the South, which is a lower income and lower cost of living area. And I make more money in the South than I did in the Midwest, which is oil field and coal country. So,
Mm-hmm.
And the technicians are even farther and fewer between. So that's a
I think
tighter,
the big thing
smaller
about the
market.
cost of living is it might be more automotive, power sports, and perhaps marine based because marine, they got to be close to water, right? And any
Right.
piece of land close to water is going to be higher value land, higher value, more cost area than those, you know,
Right.
you and ag, HD, and equipment have I'll say the luxury of basically living close but not so close, right? You can be 30 40 miles away from the home base, so to speak, because you're mobile. You're not going to home base every day, right? You're going on calls throughout. As long as you're a more centralized area for your quote unquote territory, I imagine you're going to be better off for your territory. So you can be you can be a little bit more flexible with where you live. Not very flexible, obviously, because you're not
Right.
working from home, but you want to be central-ish to your total territory. You know, while I was fixing forklifts
Yeah.
and shit, I was not exactly central to where the territories of where we spent most of our time in the kind of southwestern portions of Ontario. You know, I was 45 minutes from my house to my closest regular call, right? My closest
Yeah.
regular call, and that mattered because it meant that I had to leave early in the morning when I was going there. Or even further, I had stuff that was south that was almost 2 hours away at times, where it would be my first call. I'd be driving for 2 hours. I had to get up so that I'd be there at a decent time in the morning. Like if they opened at 7:30 in the morning and I was there for their open, I had to leave at 5:30 in the morning on those days. That was a big strain for me. Now, the question, the caveat there for me, and this is where automotive is just kind of starting to get their toes wet in mobile repair.
Yeah.
I would get, and this is where HD has been for a long time, right? HD ag and equipment have been traveling repair for a long time, long time, because the shit's too big to move. You got to fix it where it fails. So when you travel, there's a stipend that the business pays. Now, different businesses charge different ways. At the end of the day, there's still a travel charge of some description, right? You have
Right.
that travel charge. It might be different than your normal rate. It might not be. It depends on the brand. It depends on the store. But of that, if I had to drive 2 hours, we didn't charge from where I lived. We charged from home office because that's just where they based all the
Right.
repairs from. So portion of that 2 hours, so it was about 45 minutes of that 2 hours, we'd get paid for. So we try to figure out where that happy medium is, trying to be there on time, trying to be there when it opens, And that's all things that automotive needs to start taking into account when they start doing mobile. That is not to take any valuation away from the technician, but at the same time, it can add value to a technician if you out there thinking about going into mobile repair as an automotive tech, that if you're capable of managing your time effectively so that you can better benefit the business as a whole and make sure your customers are taken care of at a much higher level, because you're capable of going, okay, on Wednesday, I'm going to Fergus. Fergus is 2 hours away. I don't have to be there for open. I could be there later in the day. Why don't I make a stop in Angus on the way, which is on the way through? I can do a quick call there. It's a 30-minute service. Then I can go 45 minutes down the road. So I'm going to hit 2 up, maybe make a little extra on the travel, maybe save a little bit of money on both. And you know what I mean, right? Mobile repair.
Yeah.
You get that. Right?
Yeah, with the mobile, there's a lot more moving parts when it comes to setting up your day. So like every Sunday night, which I did before the call tonight, was I go through my schedule for the week, so I know exactly I'm booked all week long, top to bottom. I know I can pull up my schedule and know exactly where I'm going to be at on Wednesday at 3:00.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to schedule my whole week out, and then on top of that, I also have to schedule my apprentices too. So I schedule both of them, and myself for a whole week out. And there's a lot more moving parts, and then also getting all that time paid. So our OEMs pay us for travel time, depending. So some of the engine repairs, we're able to bill some of that to warranty. And then like chassis for my OEM doesn't pay, so they don't pay travel time. So I have to know, is this an engine repair or a possible engine repair, and is it possible warranty? And I also have to know, is it a possible chassis problem? So and then I have to be upfront with my customer off the rip of what my cost is if they have to incur that travel time. So there is definitely a lot of moving parts with mobile.
And that's all speaking to your value, which is part of the original question, right? How do you value yourself? How do you pose that? We can get into a whole different conversation about negotiation.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
a different story. But how do you as a technician value yourself? How do you walk into that office and have that conversation? All of these things that we're talking about, folks, adds to your level of value. If you're capable of managing time at an nth degree, like we're talking about, that's going to add value. If you're capable of negotiating or being part of the conversation about the business, like Richard's talking about. If you can look at a P&L or look at the daily take or look at work orders and be able to deduce what's going on in the day, those add value to your income, right? When you look at those ranges, when you look at a hiring ad that says paying from $20 an hour to $35 an hour, that's 40 grand to 70 grand if you're looking at hourly, right? That's the easy number. And for those of you out there that don't have the high level math skills to pop it off, easy math for anybody listening. If you see $20 an hour, even if it's flat rate, because we'll talk about that in a second, $20 an hour is 40 grand a year. You basically double the value of the hour and you get a very approximate value of 40 hours a week, 52 weeks a year. It's very, very, very close. It's roughly 2,000 hours. So if you double it, add the 3 zeros, you're pretty much good. So $20 an hour is 40, $25 an hour is 50, $35 an hour is 70, basic number. Changes a little bit with flat rate because you have to take into your productivity. If you know for the last year you're a 90% productive individual and you're looking at $30 an hour, so $30 an hour would be normally 60 grand a year. Take 10% off the top, like 6 grand, so that's roughly 54K a year for you. Okay? And so on and so on and so on. As the range exists, we're talking 20 to 35, for example, where do you fall in? All right. So the standard answer in coaching sessions, these technicians, like, how do I make more money? Well, the first thing to do is self-reflect. We talk about that all the time. Second one is to understand where your training level's at. Talked about that, in the beginning, where you're level 1, level 2, level 3, and so forth. If you are high level trained, you've got 10 years or better in one brand, and you yourself have drive to do better, both in performance and training, there's no reason why you can't ask for the top dollar. If you are anywhere but advanced level complete training and anywhere but 10 years or more, that's where the fluctuation begins. I see, hear, and literally have conversation in coaching technicians that are overvaluing because of the market. I understand that we are in high demand. That does not mean you get to charge an extra $10 an hour because of the market. You are going to get burned fast, and blown out the door because good, high-value service leaders will sniff you out and send you packing. High-value leaders will do that. The poor leaders will keep you around, dick you around, and you will be miserable. And you will not make that extra $10 an hour equivalent because they will shortchange you, right? You will be in a mental state where you do not want to be. I have been there. I don't know if I said too much and I did too much and I talked too much game and didn't produce at the time because I was too young to be able to tell you the truth right now. I don't know, but I've been there. The same thing is true on the other side of the coin. I've been dramatically undervalued doing what I'm doing, both on the bench and behind the desk. Undervalued myself. So I implore you to use the rule. Finding high value leader first, then everything else comes second. So to answer your question, Marshall, how do you value yourself? Don't value yourself first. Try and find a high value leader to work for. Then ask all of the questions that Russell and Richard and Marshall have said today. Talk about ELR, talk about gross, talk about all of the new and used cars sales, talk about travel if they happen to be talking about training and going offsite. If you happen to be in HD equipment or ag, talk about how far is the branch going to be? How often am I going to be traveling? How often am I going to be away from my family? Ask these questions during the interview. Ask these questions of your peers in the area, like Marshall said. And by God, if you don't walk in there and have enough confidence to be able to say it, whether you do say it or not, have the confidence to say the same shit that Russell said at the beginning of this episode. Let it hang and ask, what the fuck is your ELR? I want 30%. If you don't have that kind of confidence, at least inside, you're not going to get your value for sure. Awesome question. Russell.
Oh no! That's the end of today's episode, wrenches. But as always, there's going to be another one coming next week. However, we have something interesting coming this weekend. I realize it's a much shorter notice than I would like, but July 23rd, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, the lads and I, including a special guest, Mr. Zach Perkle, we're going to discuss flat rate. And we're not going to bitch, like many do. We're going to bring up concerns, and we're going to come up with solutions. I'm going to ask the lads to talk about flat rate in the opposite direction that they would normally. And there are folks that you know are not very happy with flat rate, and there are folks that are happy with flat rate, and I'm going to ask them to do the opposite. So we're going to discuss it. July 23rd, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Now, how do you participate in said event? Well, if you're a fixed ops leader or a service manager of a automotive dealership service department, and you have, give or take, 13 or more technicians under your purview, or several stores would be even better, so you have a lot more knowledge of the system of flat rate and history and so forth, and you would like to participate in the discussion, not just watch it, but participate in the discussion, you need to reach out to me directly. leader@justworkhard.com. I've already got a few spots filled of some of our family, as it were, that's going to participate in the chat. However, if you would like to watch the event on July 23rd at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, it's going to be streamed live to YouTube and to YouTube only. Why to YouTube only? Because the last time I tried to stream video to LinkedIn, it crashed, and YouTube doesn't. So it's going to get streamed to YouTube. If you don't know where our YouTube is, check out Wrench Turners on YouTube, and you should find 40 or so videos on there by now, ranging from 10 mil masteries like this one, Wrench Turners podcast, OG posts, mechanic minutes, and coaches corners. So again, if you want to participate in the live event, July 23rd, 11 a.m. Eastern, reach out to me directly, leader@justworkhard.com, to reserve your spot. There are only a few spots remaining. And if you want to watch, you can go to YouTube, subscribe to the channel so you get notified when we go live at 11 a.m. July 23rd, Eastern Standard Time. Folks, thank you very much for listening to this 10 Mil Mastery, this wonderful episode that we just finished off, talking about wages and how to assess your values and a great way to increase your values. Remember that negative pushes, positive pulls, and always clean your toys before you put them away.